Hello everybody and welcome to lesson 6 of our plants. It's me, Mr. Sartin here, and I hope you've been inspired actually over the last few lessons, maybe to get out there and plant some of your own plants, or at least go outside and have a look at what is going on with the plants around you. Have you noticed any plants growing in the ground at all? Have you planted something yourself aside from our bean investigation, which is going on? Have you looked into anything else at home? Maybe you've become a bit of a gardener since we started this and you're helping out in the garden or planting a few vegetables perhaps that you can have another time. I really hope you are enjoying it, and please keep asking questions to the adults around you about how plants live. It's really fascinating. But for today, we are going to have a look at pollination. So I'm just going to share the screen with you like always. There we go. Right, so we're on to lesson 6 now of our plants, and let's have a look at what we're doing today. So what we're going to need is you'll just need a pencil and paper. If you've got some colouring pencils or felt tips or something, that will also come in handy for the last task, but all you really need today is pencil and paper. Okay, and like I say, today's lesson is all about pollination and how and what it is. So what do we need to know? What words do we need to know? Get my words out. What words do we need to know for today? We need to know germination, pollination, seed dispersal, flowering, and pollen, as well as all of those flower vocabulary that we learned a few lessons back. So let's start off with pollen. What is it? Well, pollen is the male parts, it's a product of the male parts of the flower, which is vital for plants in order for them to reproduce and create seeds. Now, if you're like me, then actually pollen is something which is a lot of people find they're allergic to. If you have hay fever, like I do, then you're allergic to pollen. That might be tree pollen, it might be grass pollen, it might be flower pollen. But it does cause a lot of people a few problems. And me, I know in the summer, I get quite sneezy from all of it, but that's what is causing that hay fever if you've got it. It's the pollen in the air. So pollination, what is it? Well, it's plants, when plants need to produce seeds in order to reproduce. In order for this to happen, a plant must be pollinated, and that's a process. Pollen is made in the male part of the plant, the stamen, from the anther, which is supported by the filament, if you look at our picture at the bottom there. The pollen has to get to the female part of another plant, and that female plant, as we learned before, is the stigma, the star, and the ovary. But most plants can't do this alone. Some plants can. Some plants are what are called asexual, and they manage to create like clones of themselves. They make exact replicas of themselves, but not many are. Most plants need a little bit of help doing this. Okay. So let's start off with what all these parts are again, just remembering. The style, as you can see in the middle of the picture there, supports the stigma, and the stigma collects pollen from other insects. The filament holds up the anther, and the anther produces the pollen, which is then carried to another plant, and these are the male reproductive parts of the flower. The ovary holds the ovules, which waits until they are the flower's pollinated, and they help to make the seeds. Okay, so what actually happens with pollination? Well, we've talked before about how petals are important because they attract animals and insects. So we can see here our happy bee. He is very attracted by the plant. He's going over to get some nectar. He sits on the plant, the insect, but he's already got some pollen on his legs from going to other flowers. That pollen's then dropped into the flower. It mixes then with the female reproductive parts of the flower, and that's how seeds are made. And when he's done, he's collected his nectar, he goes off to find the next flower in order to find some more nectar for himself. So insects help to pollinate the flowers by carrying pollen on their legs and on their bodies. They don't really know that they're doing it. They don't mean to do it. They just happen to, when they're getting the nectar from the flower, they accidentally pick up the pollen, which is, like we said, the male parts, the reproductive parts. They fly to another flower and they drop off that pollen on another flower, and that's how flowers are able to get the male and the female parts they need. They don't know they're doing it at all. Or as far as I'm concerned, they're just busy bees getting their nectar. But it shows how important insects are for life, which is why it's so important we shouldn't be trying to exterminate them all. Another way that pollination can happen as well is through wind. And you may have seen this before with things like daisy seeds. When you blow and it goes, you see that all go away. Well, actually, you're helping pollination because they're spreading, and that's a part of seed dispersal. So, quick quiz for you now. Pause the video and have a go answering these questions. Okay. How did you do? So, went a bit too quick there. So, what are the male parts of the flower? Can you remember? Well done if you said anther and the filament. And of course, pollen is product of that. Which parts of the flower attract insects? Yep, it's the petal. Where are the ovules stored? In the ovary, well done. And what are the female parts of the flower? That's right, the stigma, the style, and the ovary itself. Okay, this is now the next step for you. So can you please write down everything on the left, everything on the right, and match them up. Pause the video, have a go. Okay, did you get that? So let's do these together. So the insects, what is their job? Well, they carry pollen while collecting nectar. The anther, what does that do? That's right. The anther produces the pollen. The filament holds up the anther, well done. The ovary, keep the ovules safe. The petal, we've done that one several times, haven't we? The petal attracts the insects and the animals. Stigma, which one's the stigma? The stigma produces the pollen. Sorry, collects pollen from the insects. What am I doing this exciting? Oh, wakey. Right, yeah. Stigma collects the pollen from the insects, and the wind helps to carry pollen as well. Well done if you got those. Okay, this is the main task today. I'd like you to draw a short cartoon sequence. Perhaps you can use our happy bee to show how a flower is pollinated. Pause the video, have a go at drawing a cartoon. Are you finished? Well done. Okay, hopefully you've got lots of those words in there as well, and you managed to explain what was going on in your cartoon. So let's just have a quick recap of how it all works to make sure your cartoon matches. So the insect arrives at the flower. On its legs, it already has some pollen from a previous flower. That's then dropped into the stigma, where it is able to produce seeds. While it's on there, it rubs up against the flower and it collects more pollen, which has been produced by the anther, and then carries that away to another flower where it's very interested in the petal and collects some more nectar, but at the same time gives away more of the pollen onto the flower so that that flower can reproduce and produce seeds. Well done, everybody. So just a quick look at the life cycle of a plant then. So we'll start off with the seeds. It starts as a seed. It then experiences something called germination, and that's when the seed is growing. It's growing at this point in germination. It starts building itself up, goes through growth, and then that seed, that flat seed becomes a plant itself with its own flower. The flower is pollinated, as we've learned, by an insect or by the wind carrying the pollen. That creates another seed. that seed starts to form, and then we get this seed dispersal, which we're going to learn about more in another lesson. That's how seeds are spread, and then it starts all over again with seeds. Okay, so for tomorrow, for next lesson, like I said, it's going to be about the seed dispersal. You're going to need paper, pencil, and some crayons. But for today, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope your cartoons came out with lots of detail on how flowers are pollinated.